Hi folks, this is just a basic and crude, call it first iteration tutorial on some of the manipulation we're able to do via FrontOFFICE in SASAMS on the mark profiling in order to better suit your school, to make the system more flexible. But as I say, you have to do it via FrontOFFICE. So for one example, there's a school that semesterizes history and geography. For grade 8, they do history in term 1 and geography in term 2, and grade 9 vice versa. So if you take a look at the profile screen for grade 8 social sciences, you will see that history is done in the first semester and geography in the second semester. If you typically were to open social sciences, you would see history, and then you would see geography, okay, in term 1, and then in term 2 you would see a geography mid-year examination and a history mid-year examination. But because we are taking, and then the same for term 2, at least semester 2, term 3 and 4, but because we are taking 12 months of history and squashing them into 6 months, what you're doing is your prac or your classwork in the first part of term 1, and then your mid-year examination, and your project in term 2, and your mid-year and your end-of-year examination at the end of term 2 for history, and then start off the process again for geography. Now, just to show you roughly, for instance, what we did in the FrontOFFICE side is we went into the table, subject criteria table, and pulled up the descriptions and the controls for this particular profiling, and quite simply we adjusted the terms. So where geography originally said term 1, we switched to term 3, and you can see that this history that was originally in term 2 we pulled into term 1, and so on. And we adjusted the dates, okay, and that gave it the date range. And you can also see that there is a field called record locked, alright, which locks formal tasks. We are able to, in certain circumstances, unlock that record and make certain changes, which, for instance, we will have to do in terms of adjusting these term weights so that they sort themselves out accordingly. But you'll notice that by simply changing the terms and the dates, that we didn't actually alter any of the information that pertains to each of these records. So in other words, their SBA component counting, and ultimately towards the end of the year everything counts as it should. Now then one is able to once again return to the same table we dealt with in the back end and lock the records again so that they are once again marked as formal. When you do your checking processes, use your checking system in SASAMS, your errors and omissions. If you don't mark it back to formal, it'll pick that up. Then so you would see that if we went to maintain learner SPA results, okay, for social science, as I showed before, in this case it would show the history in the first semester, okay, and in fact if we then go to maintain the final term marks, it then calculates a social science mark. So you're able to produce final results for social science. In spite of the fact that you have bought history, that you've squashed all of history into term 1, and well, half of the year's history into term 1, and don't actually have a geography mark in term 1. Ordinarily, the way the mark sheet would be produced in SASAMS, and if you used SASAMS exclusively, you would not be able to adjust this because it's a formal assessment and it's not adjustable. You would be faced with having to have a history and a geography mark, and so typically you would have to change and alter your school's setup in order to fit the program and not the other way around. In some senses, this may not be a major deal, but if you think that that philosophy applies only to that particular area of school governance, you'd be incorrect. Obviously, this is indicative of a much deeper and underlying preface or premise, should I say, to the entire makeup. And in other words, you're using a system that is designed to be able to fit the generic traits of all the schools in the country, and so increasingly throughout the program you would find yourself having to mold yourself to the program format, and this is just a small case in point. In other words, extrapolate this across the board and you'll see what I'm saying. As I say, fortunately, through the use of FrontOFFICE, you are able to maneuver with a certain amount of flexibility. And what we'll do as we go along, this is quite sort of clunky at the moment, but as we go along and develop better solutions, it will build interfaces in FrontOFFICE that will allow you, say for example, to just choose your subjects you want to semesterize and just click semesterize, or as Kyle says, semesterize, and the rest will be taken care of. Another example of manipulation of the mark profile in order to suit your school setup better would be, for example, in this particular school in creative arts, for grade 8, they were doing art. Let's rather go to the profile, sorry. It'll be better to see from this perspective. So they were doing visual arts and music for grade 8 in term 1, whereas for grade 9 they were doing drama and music. Right, these are formal assessments, as you could see, so originally you would not have been able to address this issue, but obviously via the use of FrontOFFICE you are able to manipulate things, or you have a greater level of flexibility. So if we found the subject, I happen to know the subject ID in this case, we go to term 1, we say the year is 2018. Okay, I was able to unlock the record so that we could adjust certain aspects of it, and I was able to get the criterion ID for each task. That is the task ID. So in other words, I wanted to now be able to manipulate the activity within that, which was also a formal assessment. Okay, and I was able to tell it that I want this, instead of art, to be drama. You see, I cannot manipulate this at the moment. Okay, right, but if I go back to my FrontOFFICE, and I think it's this one here, unlock that for the time being. Okay, you see now that is unlocked, so I could come in now and change drama to music, for instance. Okay, go back to FrontOFFICE and lock the record again, and if we refresh the screen, you'll see the record is once again locked. So if I just show you in grade 8 where they had it the other way around. Okay, so in grade 8 they were doing art and music as opposed to drama and music. So in conclusion, folks, that is just one of the ways that we can adjust certain things for you, so that again you are provided with a greater level of flexibility in order for the program to fit the needs of your school, which has always been a front office policy. We are also able to obviously adjust the fixed weightings in areas where they should be done. There have been many cases where it's been brought to the attention of the department and subject advisors where SAMS, where there are subjects where the weightings was supposed to be allowed to be adjusted. Okay, much like in, let's say, grade 10 mathematics, where you can do it. Okay, if you wanted to adjust your totals and your weightings, you simply click on weights and validations and you are able to do it here. Okay, so it's not like you shouldn't have the flexibility. You can have the flexibility to do it. And there are subjects that were supposed to be locked that weren't, and subjects that weren't supposed to be locked that are. Not to mention, as I've mentioned before in the emails, many discrepancies between the CAPS document and SAMS, which are being addressed at the highest levels. In the meantime, as always, we attempt to bring you technical solutions to these things. And again, without disrupting the flow too much from both your perspective and the department's perspective, because the goal is to provide the department with accurate data and data that are required in standardized format. But at the same time providing you with the flexibility you require. That concludes this simple and basic tutorial. As I say, this is first iteration stuff. It's more for demonstrative purposes. In many of these cases, we've helped people on a case-by-case basis. And of course, as I say, in future, as we build further integration, interface screens, etc., you will have a greater deal of flexibility and monitoring, monitoring and control over these subject profile processes in SASAMS via front office.